solen glimmer i aldrig så dansar dig då i.
We are living way beyond our means.
Welcome to Irish history. During the 1820s to 1845, Catholic Irish and German immigrants were coming over to America between 10 to 100,000, but in the 1840s and 50s, it increased. Why? I get into that later. First, let's get to know about the Know-Nothings. Now, Nativism has always been a thing since the 1790s, but the 1840s and 50s brought a particular Nativist secret society on the rise. Formed in 1849 in New York, it had many names: Order of the Star-Spangled Banner, the American Party, but famously known as the Know-Nothings. The secret society had rules. For an example, if asked by the police or a reporter if any not so nice activity happened by the member of the society, they have to say, "I know nothing." This is where the nickname of the Know Nothing comes from. To be a member in the beginning of the Know Nothings, you have to be a male. Women were allowed to take part later on. 21, Protestant, white, and native born in America. During the 1850s, the Know Nothings membership grew, and they had 100 congressmen, 8 governors, half of state legislators from Massachusetts to California, and 1,000 local politicians. But that is not to say the Know Nothings only wanted the political elite. No, the society also had members who were the working class, and this is the real reason the society became so popular to join. Now, even though the Know Nothing's agenda was to replace the 5-year naturalization period to 21 years before the immigrant is a citizen, foreign people would not be allowed to vote and hold public office, which includes Catholics. And the fear-mongering the Know Nothing was promoting: if Catholics got into public office, they would make Americans subservient to the tyrannical authority of a foreign leader, the Pope. But why were the working class flogging to the Know-Nothings? At this particular time, there was a two-party system: the Democratic Party and the Whigs. And the working class felt their concerns were not being heard by them, and the Know-Nothings were hearing these concerns. And what was the major concern? Jobs. How could a native-born citizen compete with a foreigner who would take less pay than the actual payment a native would get? And this is what the working class feared, and the Know-Nothings took advantage of it. Now, who paved the way for the Know-Nothings? Thomas Whitney and Bill the Butcher. First, let's take a look at Thomas Whitney. Thomas's father was a silversmith, and Thomas worked as an engraver and eventually opened his own shop and was an avid reader of philosophy, history, and the classics, until he wrote poetry and political tracts like "What is Equality but Stagnation?" And he also wrote A Defense of American Party Policy. While Thomas used his own printing press to promote the Know-Nothings agenda, Bill, on the other hand, had a more personal approach. Like when it came to elections, himself and his fellow Bowie boys were to persuade people in a not so nice way at polling stations to make sure they voted for the right candidate. Like one voter, it was reported to have been bitten on the arm and a severe eye injury. But it'd be fitting to say if anyone was to be a martyr of the Know-Nothing cause, it would be Bill the Butcher. It was Saturday, the 24th of February, 1855. Bill and his friends were drinking in Stanwix Hall, a newly opened saloon across from Metropolitan Hotel Broadway. And while they were drinking and chatting, John Morrissey, an Irish bare-knuckle boxer, showed up with his friends Lewis Baker, a Welshman and former policeman, and Jim Turner. Insults were exchanged between both groups. This rivalry didn't just start because both were enforcers of opposing political factions, like Bill represented the Know-Nothings and Morrissey represented the pro-Catholic faction in Tammany Hall. And not only because Morrissey is a Catholic and Bill is a Protestant, but started in October 1853, the 12th, because Morrissey beat Yankee Sullivan and Bill was mad because he bet on Sullivan to win. In 1854, Morrissey, fed up with being harassed by Butcher, challenged Bill to a fight, and it happened at Amos Street Dock. This was promoted as Nativist versus Irish, Catholic versus Protestant. But to cut it short, Bill won the fight. But it was a vicious fight, and Bill had been literally thrown off Morrissey because Bill was trying basically kill Morrissey by punching, biting, and gouging Morrissey's eyes while he was on the ground. And Morrissey never got over it. So back to Stanwix Hall, a fight broke out before it got worse. The police arrived, and Bill and his friends were told to leave. They left, came back after, and Lewis went over to Butcher, as did Turner. Argument happened, but this time Lewis took out his pistol and shot Bill in the leg, and Bill died 2 weeks later on the 8th or 11th of March. But Bill famously to have said, "Goodbye, boys, I die a true American." But what happened to Lewis Baker, the Welshman former policeman? He escaped the city, but was never indicted. Eventually, he was tried 2 times, but both times it was a hung jury. The Know-Nothing supporters in approximately 250,000 mourned Bill Butcher in Manhattan, while 6,000 mourned in New York. But as popular as the Know-Nothing was in the late 1840s and 1850s, in 1856 the Know-Nothings, like Icarus, flew too close to the sun and eventually came crashing to the ground. And why is that? Slavery. The very issue of slavery. Because the Know-Nothings only focus on one issue: immigrants. That is all. So, the Know-Nothings ceased to exist after a while, but they did stuck around for a little bit, because Whitney, in 1854 and 1855, he was a member of the Assembly, then elected in 1855 to 1857 in the 34th Congress as a member of the American Party, but he died in New York 1858. Now, the reason for the Irish and Germans for coming to America in droves. In Ireland 1845, a fungus affected the potato, and the population who relied on this food source were the poor. It's not to say Ireland didn't have other foodstuff. We bloody did. It was just expensive, and the potato was cheap and can be in abundance when it is reaped. But when the fungus affects the food source that you can afford, well, that's not good. But when the Whigs came into power in 1846, yes, there was a Whig party in Britain. There is a reason 1 million died and a further million more left Ireland. But I will get into that another time. But for the Germans, they were going through an economic instability. So with an overall 2.9 million immigrants going to America and many of Catholic faith, the Know-Nothing conspiracy focusing on numbers alone and not bothered about why these people are coming to America. Although 70% of Irish immigrants were being charity recipients, Still, it's no wonder why Know Nothing propaganda gained them a wave of members. But what was it like for Catholic Irish and Catholic Germans while being in America? Well, in Louisville, Kentucky, for example, on 6th of August 1855, a Know Nothing mob showed up while elections were happening, and they were there to block 1,000 Catholic Irish and Germans to vote. And what happened was beatings, lootings, arson, and murder. German breweries were burned, homes were ransacked, and a cannon was literally aimed at St. Martin's Catholic Church. And out of the chaos, half of the city was burned, and only 20 people voted, and 22 dead. And this is known as Bloody Monday. The propaganda promoted by the Know Nothings, which I will show some of it here, shows the Catholic Irish and Catholic Germans running away with the votes, and other show the Irish as apes. The cartoon of the Irish as apes wasn't created by the Know Nothings, but they sure love using it. But it was started by Thomas Nast, a German who moved to America in 1846, and the man who is famous for the image of the, at the time, updated look of Uncle Sam and Santa Claus. But the ugly look of the Irish was started when James Gilray drew the Irish as ogres because of the 1798 rebellion. Now, while the Irish and the Germans were moving over to America, they did contribute. Like the Germans boosted America's industrial power, built schools, churches, built breweries, and the Irish organized labor as well, building literature and music as did the Germans. These people contribute a lot, but the one thing the Know Nothing members have been doing, turning in their graves, when JFK, an Irish Catholic American, became President of the United States of America. That is all for today. See you in the next one. Slán an ish.